So now that we have a better understanding of the sort of things that we need to be aware of when developing assumptions, we need to move on to actually developing some of these assumptions, and we're going to do that in this part 6, using the real estate marketing example of who pays. So in this particular case, we're going to first focus on the relationship between entity A and B. A, you'll recall, is the common objective, and B is one of the necessary conditions. And you can see here that I've identified 4 assumptions. And again, bearing in mind that these are seeking to explain why we believe A and B are related, you can see here the first one says that the successful marketing campaign involves identifying and targeting those potential customers most likely to buy the owner's house with a competitive offer. So we're assuming that that's the case, and that's why in order for A to occur, B must occur. We also assume that successful marketing campaigns are fundamental in communicating to the potential buyers the owner's house is for sale. Thirdly, that the house owner's price is likely to trend higher when there is more demand from potential buyers than supply caused by a successful marketing campaign. And finally, that successful marketing campaigns include a call to action that cause potential buyers to make a decision to place a bid with the house owner sooner rather than later. So the 2 requisites of a successful marketing campaign, competitive bidding, and a call to action that causes the decision to buy to occur sooner rather than later, are inherent in the campaign, and all of these factors help to assist maximise the return to the house owner. Moving on to the relationship between B and D, which is predicated on in order to have a successful marketing campaign, we must have the house owner adequately fund the marketing costs. Some of the assumptions that underpin that reasoning are, firstly, in order to not compromise the marketing campaign by a cost minimisation mindset that may occur if the agent actually was paying for the marketing campaign. The second one is when the owner pays the marketing costs, means that the owner has a greater opportunity to gain insight and influence the success of the marketing campaign. So the ability to pay, or the decision by the owner to pay, gives him or her that right and entitlement. Thirdly, the owner can adjust the amount of spend in accordance with the success or otherwise of the campaign. So if the campaign needs more funds, then the owner can make that decision and influence that decision directly because he has that insight that was mentioned earlier. And finally, the owner paying the marketing costs recognises the owner's right to withdraw the property from sale or assign it to another agent without financial penalty or negotiation with other parties, such as if the agent had paid for that marketing costs. And finally, where the owner pays the marketing costs, recognises that the owner's right to terminate the campaign and assign the property for sale to another agent without financial penalty to others is another example of an assumption that underpins the relationship between B and D. So moving on to the relationship between the common objective A and the necessary condition C, which is the bottom line of reasoning, we can see that our assumptions in terms of justifying this relationship between these 2 entities is because firstly, there's no misalignment between the real estate agent's objectives and the seller's objectives due to the principal-agent relationship. So in contract law, the agent is obliged to act in the best interests of the principal. And so therefore we are assuming that occurs when we say that in order to maximise the returns to the house owner, the house owner must engage a real estate agent that is willing to accept marketing responsibility and accountability. Secondly, it's in the interest of the agent to sell the house as soon as possible to make their commission. So this is also an example of an assumption that aligns with the house owner's objective, because the house owner will want to maximise his returns. The house owner maximises his returns when he sells the house as soon as possible. And in conjunction with item 3, which is it's in the interest of the agent to sell the house for the best price to maximise their commission. So again, when the agent does that, that aligns with the house owner's objective of maximising their returns, and that the owner's objective and the agent's payment structure are 100% aligned. So as the price of the house that is paid by a third party increases, so too does that serve the interests of the house owner or the objective of the house owner and the real estate commission's payment. So again, an example of an assumption that sits behind these two relationships. So now let's move on to the relationship between C and D, which is in order to engage a real estate agent that is willing to accept marketing responsibility and accountability, the owner must not have the house owner fund the marketing costs. So we think this is valid, this relationship, because the agent is responsible for selling the house and the marketing costs are therefore their costs of doing business. So the owner could certainly argue that position. Secondly, the agent should be willing to pay the marketing costs in order to gain competitive advantage, i.e. cause the house owner to place his business with that agent compared to some other agent. Thirdly, the agent is legally liable to act in the best interests of the principal even when the seller doesn't pay the marketing costs. So this was mentioned before, but it's emphasised in this particular case because if the agent does pay the marketing costs, which is what's being proposed here, it shouldn't compromise the fact that the agent should continue to act in the best interests of the owner. Fourthly, when the marketing costs are borne by the real estate agent, the returns on the sale increases for the owner, which is an obvious statement, but it is an assumption that's being made. And thirdly, that when the agent pays the marketing costs, this decision has no negative effect on achieving the maximum price in the shortest time possible. So the owner's certainly making that fifth assumption. And again, bear in mind, one of the criteria for assumptions is we may not necessarily agree with any of these assumptions in terms of their validity. All we're seeking to do at this stage is define their clarity. Okay, so moving on to exposing assumptions between D and D prime, which is the conflict about whether the house owner funds the marketing costs or doesn't. You can take two perspectives here in terms of the wording, and for the first two assumptions I've actually shown both perspectives, but you'll find that assumptions 3 to 6 just take the owner's perspective, but they can be reworded from the agent's perspective as well, but I haven't bothered to do that because I hope that examples that I give in 1 and 2 is sufficient to help explain what I mean. So the reason why the owner can't both fund or can't simultaneously fund the marketing costs and not fund the marketing costs is firstly due to the assumption that when the estate agent pays for the marketing costs, that the agent hasn't incorporated that fact into their quoted agency commission, i.e. if they're paid for the marketing costs, they haven't upped their agency commission to compensate for that. We're assuming that that's the case. Another way of looking at that is that when the owner has decided to pay the marketing cost, the agency commission is unaffected. So this is an underlying assumption that we're making when the owner either pays or doesn't pay. And similarly, when we get to assumption 2, the first approach is that when the owner has successfully negotiated that the real estate agent pays for the marketing costs, that this won't influence the recommendations by the agent, i.e. to sell at a more expedient but not necessarily best price. I.e. is the agent motivated to try and sell the house quicker as a result of paying the agency cost, and therefore in that respect the owner pays for it by accepting a lower price than he would have otherwise. But another way of wording that is that when the house owner pays for the marketing costs, this will not affect the recommendation by an agent to sell at a particular price. So again, looking at those two perspectives, you can word it one way or another. So if we now move on to assumptions 3 to 6, I only take the perspective of the owner, but again, I want to make the point that it could be worded from the perspective of the agent. So again, we're saying D and D prime are in direct conflict because when the owner has successfully negotiated the real estate agent pays for the marketing costs, that this won't cause the marketing campaign to be any less effective, i.e. if the owner doesn't pay for the marketing costs, that the agent will still embark on a successful marketing campaign. He or she will not take a cost reduction perspective or a minimisation perspective. Fourthly, that the owner thinks that if they have successfully negotiated that the real estate agent pays for the marketing costs, that this won't influence the quality, timeliness or accuracy of the data provided by the agent to the owner in respect to that marketing campaign. Fifthly, that there is an inherent belief that who pays for the marketing costs is a matter of principle rather than in terms of what is in the best interests of the primary objective. So what we're saying here is that when the owner decides to pay or not pay, what seems to be the case is that that the owner is thinking that it's a matter of principle whether he should pay or not pay, rather than looking at it from the perspective of, well, what's in the best interest of maximising the returns to the owner. And in that instance, he or she may come to a different view about this issue than what they're making currently. And then finally, the reason these are in conflict is because there's no standardised approach guiding who pays, i.e. should the agent pay or should the principal pay or the owner pay. And so that's the reason why these two are in conflict.